Hello everybody, Jennifer Maker here. It's a beautiful day to learn how to sublimate a shirt from seam to seam. We'll learn how to tile a print, tape it together correctly, and press a large area with minimal seams. There are a few ways to do this, but I'll show you what I think work best for me in this video. Wouldn't you love to add a big, bold design to a shirt like this? The inspiration for this tutorial came from our community. A crafter by the name of Agnes shared a full sublimation shirt, and I loved it. So this is extra special. I really love how flexible sublimation can be as long as you work with the correct materials. We're adding a big design, so it's best to work with a white 100% or close to it polyester shirt, since the translucent sublimation ink needs the polymers to really get a good dye. If we're using a smaller design, there are ways to make an area sublimation ink friendly, but we're going to keep it simple for this project and use a white polyester shirt, like the Cricut ones I'm using here. They come in several styles and sizes. Just make sure that you pick an option as close to 100% polyester as possible. It will really make a difference for you. And of course, if you're new to sublimation and all this talk about polyester content and translucent inks is news to you, check out my Sublimation for Beginners guide at jennifermaker.com/sublimation for beginners. It is a great place to begin. Since working with big designs like this does take some practice, it's a good idea to have some simple white polyester fabric to practice on. I have both the shirts and the practice fabric linked below this video for you. I'll also share the temperature, time, and pressure that worked best for me, but it's always a good idea to test just in case you need to adjust the variables for your materials and tools. And before that, we need to make our design for our shirt, of course. So I'll show you how to use free software to control how your sublimation printer creates it. The secret is tiling. We'll make the file big enough to cover an entire side of the shirt and then break it into sections that we'll put back together again with blue heat-resistant tape to transfer it. Even if your printer has its own software, I recommend following these steps to make tiling easier. And when you're picking a design, consider using my flower file to learn with or a similar one like this to start, because creating minimal seams is a lot easier when there's some white to visually break up the shirt. I did try another cute design with less white, and the seams were way more visible, no matter how many tricks I tried. If you try a shirt with big colorful sections, really take your time preparing the paper seams using the tips I'm going to show you in this video. But even no matter how good you do, you might have some inconsistencies. Remember, this is a homemade shirt and nothing has to be perfect. Do you hear me? Nothing has to be perfect. Of course, this is a sublimation project, so you'll need a sublimation printer with sublimation ink and paper in it. I also recommend good ventilation, a fan, an uncoated white butcher paper for catching the excess ink, a lint roller to prepare your shirt, and heat-resistant tape to keep everything in place during pressing. Speaking of pressing, I'm using a Cricut Easy Press for this project. You can, of course, use other ones as well, but that's what I'm using for this project. And I'm using not one, but two pressing mats because it's easier to move the press than the shirt once it's prepared. Heat presses are not all the same, so I have different information for different press types in my Sublimation Cookbook at sublimationcookbook.com. And if you're curious how I added the sleeve details, like the flowers on this shirt, stay tuned all the way to the last step for more details. So, are you ready to fully sublimate some t-shirts? Let me show you how to get my free files, and then we'll start. Step 1, get my free full shirt sublimation designs. I have a pretty flower garden design for you to try and learn how this all works. Feel free to use any design for this technique, of course, but I'm going to demonstrate how it works with this floral design, and I encourage you to practice with it until you feel confident. First, download my design at jennifermaker.com/614. You can either download right from that link by saving the project, or download from my entire free design collection. To find it, look for Libraries in the red bar at the top, Then click either Get a Password if you don't yet have one, or click Enter the library. Search the page for design number 614 and click the link to download the design. Now, I used an AI art generator, ethically, to create this design, then adjusted it with image editing software. If you want to learn more about the process of AI art generation ethically, check out my workshop on creating and using AI-generated art in your crafts over at jennifermaker.com/AI-art. And if you're not sure how to upload, go to jennifermaker.com/SVGS because the steps are very similar for files like this. Step 2, prepare your full sublimation shirt design. We want to print the design at the right dimensions, so smooth your shirt out flat with the side seams straight. Then measure the width from seam to seam and the height from the very bottom of the hem, because we're going to sublimate that area up to where you want it to stop. I'll go up onto the chest. For this small adult Cricut shirt, my design width will be 18 inches and the height will be 21 inches. That's bigger than most printer paper, but don't worry, I'll show you how to make it work. Now, you could prepare a big design like this using a lot of different software, such as Adobe Photoshop or Canva. But today, I will demonstrate using Google Drawings because it's free and available to everyone. So on your computer, go to jennifermaker.com/Google Drawings to begin. If you don't have a Google account, you can make one for free. Once Google Drawings is open, select Page Setup under the File menu. Select Custom and input your shirt's design dimensions. My design area is 18 by 21 inches. Click Apply and the canvas will change to match. Under the Insert menu, select Image and Upload from Computer. Then find your file and open it. It might not fit the canvas, but we'll fix it. With the image selected on the canvas, click Format Options. You have a lot of control here. First, click Size and Rotation, then check the box for Lock Aspect Ratio to maintain the design's proportions. Change the width and height to match your measurements. It's okay if the measurements aren't quite even, but make sure the width is about the same as your shirt. To make sure the design fills the canvas, click Position and select Top Left in the From dropdown. That means we're using the top left corner as our starting point. Set both the X and Y fields to 0 to make the design's top left corner move to the top left of the canvas so it all fits. Name your design by clicking in the top section that says Untitled. To save the file to your computer, go to the File menu and select Download, and then pick the PDF option. Step 3, print your sublimation design. Now remember, we need to make our design print across several sheets to be big enough to cover our shirt. So I recommend printing and sublimating one side at a time to avoid confusing your panels. I like to sublimate the back first to get comfortable with how the panels go together so I can make it look even better on the front. So download and open the free version of Adobe Acrobat Reader from jennifermaker.com/acrobat. Open the design PDF and make sure it's the correct image. Then select Print from the File menu. Your settings may look slightly different than mine depending on your computer and printer, but use my choices as a guide. Make sure your sublimation printer is selected in the dropdown and then select Poster. If you don't see this poster option, it may be because of your operating system. But don't worry, I've got an alternate way to do this in my blog post at jennifermaker.com/614. But let me demonstrate with the poster option, as this should work for most of you. Using the poster setting, we'll print multiple 8.5 by 11 inch or letter size sheets of paper. For this design and size, it will print out 6 sheets of paper. Now we want our panels to slightly overlap to help blend the seams. So set the overlap to 0.2 and check the cut marks box. That means each panel will have a little matching area to blend and some alignment symbols to help us later. Then click the printer button for some sublimation printing settings. Under Layout, make sure Flip Horizontally is checked since we're going to use heat to transfer the design and it needs to be mirrored. For your paper and print quality, select Photo Matte Paper and Best Quality. Make sure you have sublimation paper loaded correctly into your printer according to the packaging and click Print. As the pages print, gently remove them and place each face up to dry without smudging. Step 4. Prepare your print for sublimation. Once your pages dry, lay them out like the complete design to make sure everything printed correctly. Remember, it's still mirrored, but it's going to be so pretty. If we start with the bottom right panel, we're going to mentally number our pages 1 through 6, going clockwise. And if you look closely, you should notice the cut marks at the page's corners. If you print with Adobe Acrobat, they look like 2 corners with a straight line in the middle. We're going to cut between the middle and outer marks, leaving the middle and inner ones to help with alignment. Any marks within the main design area will be trimmed away before pressing. Now we need to trim away some edges to make overlapping and taping the panels together a seamless result. Set panel 6, which is the middle right one, aside because that's our anchor piece and its preparation is a little different. On panel 1, we'll prepare and trim the top long edge and the left short edge. Place the panel face down on a clean work surface. I'm using my self-healing mat, but a plain table works well. Get a piece of blue heat-resistant tape about the length of the top edge. Lightly place the tape along the edge so the top slightly goes past where the ink ends. Our goal is for the tape to go all the way to the edge after we trim the white area away. If you're having trouble seeing where the ink starts, try holding it up to a light. Make sure there are no wrinkles in the tape and then smooth it down well with your fingers. Repeat for the short edge where it will meet the other panel. It's okay for the tape pieces to overlap. We want really straight trimming cuts, so extend the guide arm on your paper trimmer. Place panel 1 face up on the trimmer's cutting area, so the taped long edge is under the ruler and the top edge is aligned with the top guide, so the cut will be straight. Adjust the print so the cut line will be just inside the outer cut mark, which means it will remove about 1/8 inch of the design. That's okay, since we're working with overlapping pieces. Lower the guide ruler and make sure the cut will still be in the correct spot. Now hold the ruler in place with one hand, but keep your fingers away from the blade. And with your other hand, bring the blade straight down in a smooth motion to make the cut. The main panel and the little piece you trimmed should each have ink and tape all the way to one edge. Repeat the process for the other edge you taped. The other panels will be taped and trimmed the same way wherever they need to touch another piece of paper. So for panel 2 on the bottom left, tape and trim the top and right edges. For panel 3 at the middle left, tape and trim the top, bottom, and right edges. For panel 4 at the top left, tape and trim the bottom and right edges. For panel 5 at the top right, tape and trim the left and bottom edges. And for panel 6, our anchor panel that we'll use to start our alignment, we won't add tape to the back, but do trim the top, bottom, and left edges. Place it face up in the correct orientation and confirm that there are still some partial cut marks near the right edge, away from the actual design. Now add a short piece of heat-resistant tape, sticky side up to the back of the bottom edge so it's secure, but there is adhesive visible. Align a remaining cut mark on panel 1's top right with the bottom right one on panel 6. Then hold that spot in place and pivot panel 1 until the rest of the design lines up at the seam. If the early seams are misaligned, it will be more difficult to position the remaining panels correctly, so take your time. Once the panels are aligned correctly, press panel 1 in place on the tape from panel 6. Add heat-resistant tape over the seam by the aligned cut marks, away from the design. This will help keep the panels in place while we align the rest, but we will trim away the excess tape and cut marks before pressing. Continue adding the panels in clockwise order using the same method. Now, if you can't easily reach the next seam, gently rotate the assembled panels to bring it closer to you instead of reaching over the project. It's really important not to shift the panels until everything is aligned and secure. As you add more panels, any little misalignments will compound to shift the rest of the seams. So take your time and gently redo any that don't look quite right. If a seam is wavy, the transfer might have white spots or discolorations, and you don't want that. The last seam of securing panel 5 to panel 6 is the most challenging because there are so many seams partially secured. So really take your time checking the alignment and making sure the edges are smooth. Once everything is tiled, look closely over all the papers to make sure the elements are aligned and there are no cut marks remaining in the design. Carefully fix any issues you see now, instead of rushing and making a shirt with gaps or other issues. When you're happy with the alignment, add a few more pieces of heat-resistant tape over the seams in the outer white areas to keep everything secure. Just stay about 3/4 of an inch away from the ink. Now carefully flip the assembled panels over onto your clean work surface. It should be large and solid so you can work on the seams without tearing anything. Starting in the middle between panels 6 and 3, gently place a strip of heat-resistant tape along the seam. If any tape gets bunched up, trim it away and try again with a fresh piece. Once you're sure the tape is smooth, press it down along the seam. Now working from the middle out clockwise, add heat-resistant tape to the rest of the seams. We'll trim the excess white paper away from around the design so you don't have to tape the entire seam if the ink only covers part of it. We want these seams to be really secure for a few reasons. First, so ink can't move through wrinkles in the tape when it's a gas and dye areas that we don't want, but also to make the seams as close to invisible as possible. To help, smoothly run your scraper tool over each seam to press the tape down, being careful not to snag any pieces when they overlap. Then use the scraper's thin edge to push the tape right into each seam, including the visible seam under the translucent tape and where the lower paper finishes overlapping with the upper panel, about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch away. Making the paper on either side of the seams even by pressing the surfaces together will help create an invisible seam as the ink can span their difference easier. The less visible the seam, the more consistent your transfer will look in the end. Now carefully flip the project over. Then use scissors to cut about 1/2 inch around the design's rough outline, removing the extra white paper as well as any additional tape and cut alignment marks. At the bottom, cut in a straight line about 1/4 inch from the design. Step 5, sublimate your t-shirt. Remember, always open a window or turn on a fan before sublimating to help improve your ventilation. Set your heat press to the correct temperature and preheat time. According to my Sublimation cookbook, the easy press needs to be set at 385 degrees Fahrenheit or 196 degrees Celsius for 10 seconds for polyester fabric. We want to keep the t-shirt design area as even and still as possible because any dips or a lot of moving can make the fabric or paper shift, and that could mess up your transfer. So I put 2 large pressing pads together to make a tall area that I can use in sections. But you could also do this with 1 pressing pad. Just take your time and let each area you press cool completely before moving on to reach a new area. We usually protect the pressing surface with white cardstock, but white uncoated butcher paper's thinner edges will impact the transfer less. We'll use a few layers altogether. Place 1 piece covering the top pad aligned with the lower edge. Add another on the lower pad, slightly overlapping the first piece. Then attach them with heat-resistant tape. The seam will help us keep track of the dip between the pads so we don't accidentally press over it. Carefully cut away any tags in the shirt's side seams that will interfere with the transfer. And if you see any loose threads, trim them now too. Any little string or tag could grab the ink or create a ripple in your shirt during pressing. Also, if your design goes right up to the seams, you may want to consider removing the stitching from the seams before you press, and then sew it back up later. I'm not going to do that today, but just know that it's an option if you need it. And to be extra careful, use a lint roller to remove any dust or debris from the front and back of the shirt. You can start with the front or the back, but I like using the back as a little bit more practice, since it won't be as visible as the front if I make a little mistake. Center the shirt on the protected pressing pads so the design area is completely on them, and smooth out the fabric layers. Use heat-resistant tape to secure the lower layer of the shirt's bottom edge to the protective butcher paper. Then add some tape at the shoulders or other places you aren't decorating to keep the shirt in place. Cut a piece of butcher paper long enough to go under the entire design and out the bottom of the shirt. If it's not as wide as the shirt, cut another piece the same length. For an adult small, I used 2 pieces. You'll need a good amount of butcher paper for this project, but it really helps. Slide one piece into the shirt from the bottom and shift it up against the side seam to protect the lower layer from the ink. Gently adjust the seam so any inner sewn fabric is underneath the paper, so it won't unevenly lift a section of the shirt. The paper will help smooth it out. Hold that seam in place and add the other piece of butcher paper inside to meet the other side seam. If any of the lower fabric is unprotected between the butcher paper, cut and slide in another piece. 2 is enough for mine. Make sure the shirt is smooth and still free from lint. Since the press is smaller than the design, we'll heat it in sections, including for the preheating. Cover the lower right area of the shirt with butcher paper and then press it with light pressure for 10 seconds to remove wrinkles and moisture. Gently lift the press without shifting the shirt, then move the butcher paper to a new spot and continue preheating in all sections. It's good practice to lift the cord with the press instead of dragging it, because dragging that cord can move the design in the next step, and you don't want that. Slightly overlapping your presses and going over the seam between the pads is fine when preheating. Now let the shirt cool so the ink won't be sublimating while you're still positioning the design. Keep your easy press at the same temperature, but set the time to 40 seconds. Make sure the shirt is still smooth and cool to the touch, and then set the taped print face down on top. Adjust the arch so it goes just beyond the bottom of the hem and matches the sides. Now, without shifting the paper or the shirt, secure the design's top edge to the fabric with heat-resistant tape. Try to keep the tape on white sections of the paper instead of near the ink. Hold the print's top edge in place and carefully smooth straight down to secure the bottom with tape to the butcher paper. Repeat the process to secure the print at either side of the paper too. If taping shifts the shirt or design, just remove it and try again. Now remember, I don't want to sublimate with my press touching the dip between the pressing pads. So I'll cover the lower shirt section with butcher paper with its top edge in the seam between the pads. Keeping the heat about an inch away from the top of the butcher paper and therefore away from the pad seam, press the lower right section of the design with light pressure for 40 seconds. Remember, support the press's cord with one hand to keep it from dragging over the design and shifting anything. When the time is up, lift the press and cord straight up. Then press the left side the same way with minimal overlap, because overheating can cause slight discoloration. If you can press the area above the first row while remaining away from the uneven section, heat the next areas too. If not, let the shirt cool before moving on to anything else. Now carefully remove the butcher paper so you can see the sections that you've heated. Ink will show through the pressed areas more, and the paper might be slightly yellowed from the mat. When you need to move a new section onto an even pressing area, gently pull the cold project by the lower butcher paper pieces. I'll pull mine to the top edge of the already pressed area is about an inch above the pressing pad seam. Add fresh butcher paper on top of the new section with the bottom edge aligned on pressing pad dip so you know to stay at least an inch away from it. Press the remaining sections the same way, repeating the process until the entire design is transferred. You can remove the top butcher paper, but don't reveal the design right away. This is a lot of ink that we want to transfer correctly, so let the shirt cool completely to finish the sublimation process. Now you can remove the tape and print to see your first side's result. Leave the inner butcher paper in place because we'll use it to move the shirt before replacing it. Of course, you can stop right now if you like the one-sided look, or continue, it's up to you. Step 6, sublimate the second side. To decorate the second side, repeat the printing and design tiling process with the same dimensions. If you noticed any seams that weren't as invisible as you'd like on the first press, pay extra attention to them this time. Then cut the image to size the same way. To prepare the shirt, leave the inner butcher paper in place, but carefully remove any tape holding the shirt down. Use the lower protective butcher paper to move the project off of the pressing area, keeping it as flat as possible. Place fresh butcher paper on the pressing pads, making sure to take the seam and position it between them. Holding the shirt and inner papers in place at the side seams, gently flip the project so it's face down on the freshly protected pressing mats. Remove and replace the inner butcher paper, making sure the seams are straight and aligned again. The shirt is already preheated, so you don't need to heat it again to remove the moisture. But it's worth very gently lint rolling the surface in case any dust or debris has gotten stuck to it. Now take your time to completely smooth the fabric back out. And make sure the butcher papers are in position to keep new ink from getting to the previously sublimated layer. Check that the side seams are still straight along the paper, so some of the new design can transfer to them, blending with the front. Repeat the design placement and sublimation process using the same steps as the first side to complete your full sublimation shirt. Remember, take your time and the result will be beautiful because it's homemade. Step 7, show it off. Here is my full sublimation shirt. I love all these flowers. I am totally going to use this technique to make the most beautiful dress ever with these flowers. It's the same basic idea, just a little bigger. I think this turned out amazing. Step 8, customize it. Do you want to sublimate even more of your t-shirt? I tested some ways to sublimate on the sleeves with great results. Now, sleeves are tricky, so you won't find many tutorials that cover sublimating them. But I can show you how to decorate the front and back of both sleeves through a special program called Advance with Jennifer Maker. You can learn all about it over at jennifermaker.com/advance. The Advance program helps you advance your crafting skills by teaching you how to truly make these popular designs unique and special through tutorials and templates, as well as give you early access to my vast library of designs, projects, and resources. I may or may not be accepting new members into the Advance program at the time you see this video, but if you're interested, go to jennifermaker.com/advance to learn more. And now you know how to sublimate a t-shirt from seam to seam. I love how much color and interest we can add to a shirt with some patience and the right tools, don't you? I can't wait to see what you make. I know you're going to make some awesome things. Now, caring for these sublimated t-shirts is really easy because the ink dyes the fibers instead of just sitting on top of them the way like heat transfer vinyl would. Just wait at least a day so everything sets, then turn it inside out and wash it with cold or warm water and mild detergent. Then hang it to dry or tumble it with low heat. The design will last as long as the shirt. And remember, if you want to learn how to add the sleeve details, like right here, visit jennifermaker.com/advance for more information on really cool ways to customize designs. And I also have a Facebook group just for sublimation, which is a great way to see all the fun you can have with it and all the amazing things you can make. Come join us at jennifermaker.com/sublimation group. I'd love to have you come ask questions, share ideas, and get inspired. And that's it for today. Until next time, this is Jennifer Maker reminding you to craft a life you love.